Well, greetings and salutations, and welcome back to the paranormal side of the channel. Before we get into tonight's upload, a couple links. As you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, and my merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. The links to Patreon and PayPal are in the description below, my merch displayed directly under this video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1, 2, and 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeffrey Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, the links to which are also in the description as well. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's take that walk on the paranormal side. Shall we? Today's first experience on the paranormal side. This happened when I was 15. For context, I am 22 now. Before this happened, I had no belief in anything paranormal and thought that it was just unbelievable. However, the summer of 2011 proved me wrong. That summer, I was visiting my grandmother's boyfriend's house, which is located in Florida. This was the first time I had visited his house since my grandma had recently moved in with him that year. I was excited because it was my first trip on my own without my parents, where I could spend a week hanging out on the beaches. When I arrived, my grandmother's boyfriend, who is a great guy, greeted me and gave me a tour of his modest home. The common theme I picked up on was Native American decor. He had family and descendants that were of the Sioux tribe in the Midwest, and he spent several summers as a teenager on the reservation with the tribe. It was neatly decorated, and towards the end of the tour he pointed to a small leather pouch that was hanging near his bed. He became very composed and stated how that item was a gift given to him by a Sioux tribe after spending several summers with them. He explained further on how it was a medicine pouch, which contained the crushed bones of a buffalo and of a medicine man. He stated very clearly and without hesitation how this medicine man is a spirit who protects him and the place where the pouch is. And then he said he may come and visit you tonight since you are a new guest. Of course, being the 15-year-old teenage boy, I felt no fear and laughed it off with him. I mean, there was no way a man could pop out of a bag and visit me, right? Well, by sharing this story, you can probably guess that I was wrong. Shortly after giving the tour, my grandmother's boyfriend had to leave. He's a contractor for an electrical company and had to drive up to northern Florida for a project the next day. So it was just me and my grandmother in one room with the pouch and her two chihuahuas, with me on the other side of the house in the guest room. I remember falling asleep without any problems at around 11 p.m. However, I awoke what I thought was a burglar, with loud noises coming from the kitchen/living room next door. I checked my phone. It was a little past 3 in the morning. The noises continued and I began to panic. There was a security alarm in the house that was armed just before bed, but I heard no alarm. My grandmother, who could sleep through a nuclear explosion beside her, would not be doing crazy loud things at such an odd time. However, right as I was about to get out of bed, the door vibrated and shook. The noises from the kitchen stopped. I buried my head in my pillow and under the covers. The room got super cold, but yet I was sweating bullets. I kept pinching myself to see if I was dreaming, but I was not. I peeked out of the corner of my eye from the pillow to see down the hallway, and I froze, locked in a gaze with a pale silhouette figure that resembled a Native American. He had a face that looked leathery and without wrinkles, his lips drawn into a tight straight line that was devoid of emotion. His eyes were pure white, and he looked straight through me. I could only feel chills go down my spine. The hair stood all over my body. My bed felt like it was shaking as well. It felt like an eternity before he had turned away. almost like he was walking frame by frame, like when you view things with a strobe light on. And then the door vibrated again. Finally, he had left my room. He made some more noises outside with banging cabinets and such, and then it all stopped. Naturally, I did not sleep, too scared to walk out of my room. That 15-year-old charisma and bravery was now out the window. As soon as daylight hit the curtains of my room, I ran out and discovered the cabinets were all open, pots and pans thrown about, and then in the living room with all of the pictures/paintings thrown from the walls to the ground. I immediately woke up my grandmother, who was shocked for a minute, but then nonchalantly stated, "Oh, that ghost again, making such a mess." I stood with my mouth wide open, trying to form sentences to tell my grandmother that this is not normal, but I guess she's already used to it. Her boyfriend came back later that evening, and I told him about the encounter, and he said he was not surprised, since, like he said earlier, I was new. Apparently, I am one of many family members that has seen this medicine man. Apparently, he's friendly. He just wanted to see if I was nice. At least they're somewhat considerate in the afterlife. But I mean, I have other opinions. Looking back now, I should have taken pictures. I only had a crappy flip phone at the time with a barely usable camera. And I just shut out most of the experience for years because I was terrified, honestly. I stayed for the rest of the week, still waking up at the same time, 3 a.m, but I did not see the medicine man again. The house felt like there was a heavier presence whenever you would walk in. Sometimes during the day, the dogs would have started low growling at the master bedroom where the pouch was, and nothing would be there. I was gracious for the hospitality, but I never ventured into the house again. They've moved to Alabama now. I hate to be a rude family member, but I don't think I'll be coming down for the housewarming gift. If you've made it this far, thank you. I just wanted to get that off of my chest. About half of the people I have told this do not believe me. They enjoy it as a story, but not an actual experience of encountering something most people don't understand. I shut it out for a long time because it was just really terrifying for me. Today's second experience on the paranormal side. I live in the country by a large forest just east of Mankato, Minnesota. Mankato has a lot of history with the Dakota Wars of 1867. I believe that's the year. I think 38 natives were executed for killing settlers in the surrounding area. Backstory: my aunt is a self-proclaimed expert on the paranormal and has had many demonic stories from her old home and from her children. Like there was one where she came home and there was blood wiped all over the wall and coming out of the cupboard. There was no explanation for it. One day she sent me an old map of the area next to the town I lived by, so my land, saying that it was an old Winnebago Indian reservation. I was interested in the paranormal and have had many experiences on my property. A few years ago, my cousin and myself were using the EVP and we got words like native, Pacific, forest. We also found horseshoes that great-grandparents have found, even though nobody throughout my entire family tree lived there. Nobody knows where they came from. One night I was playing airsoft outside with my cousin at around 2 a.m. I was walking by the barn and I saw a human shadow and it lit up and said, "Gotcha, beach." And then all of a sudden, it sprinted away. I was confused, but then I was shot in the back by my cousin who was following me for a while. He asked me, "Who are you talking to?" I was standing there dumbfounded. I was stumbling on my words saying, wait, oh my God, that wasn't you." I was creeped out and confused. Nothing really confusing or bewildering has happened for a while, apart from shadow people all the time. Eerie flute-like sounds I've heard late at night outside. Radios turning on suddenly, electronics randomly being turned on. The normal paranormal stuff. Today's third experience on the paranormal side. In April of 2006, I had done 9 days on the Appalachian Trail, and it was truly life-changing. So I had bad camping bug the whole year. I was hammock camping any possible chance I got. The farm I grew up on sits up on a hill overlooking a creek bottom area where tobacco and soybeans are grown. An absolutely beautiful area, and the creek looks more like a small river at times. This is an area where arrowheads have often been found. Just a mile away, a Native American burial ground was excavated when I was in the 4th grade, where the high school sits now. I remember it very well, and it was a half a mile walking distance from my home. Our driveway at one time had been the country road, but it dead-ended on our property, but who knows what happened. At one time, it was a well-traveled route, probably back when the county was settled, originally at the very least. After all, it was only a mile as the crow flies from the county seat. The old road cuts deep into the hills, and there's a little offshoot gravel road that diverges off of it and goes down to the creek bottom in front of our house. I was feeling nostalgic and decided I was going to camp in the creek bottom at the end of our old gravel road. This was something we had done often in the general area growing up, and it felt familiar to me as the back of my hand. There was an old barn that stood there when I was a little kid, but it was long gone. I decided to make my camp on the opposite side of the road at the edge of the bottom, not even going as far in as we usually did. I made a little fire, set up my hammock, and chewed on a snack that I had brought with me. For some reason, I wasn't feeling all that comfortable. I was trying to settle down into an idea, but I was really ill at ease. Keep in mind, this place that is basically in my parents' front yard, maybe a quarter of a mile from their front door. I grew up here. I've played in this very spot since a small child, but I felt extremely uncomfortable. I did 9 days on the Appalachian Trail without feelings like what I've experienced on this moment. I was determined to stay down there and laughed at myself. It was a pretty calm, quiet night. Then, all of a sudden, a big gust of wind blew through the camp out of complete calm. It made no sense. I was basically surrounded by clumps of trees nestled up against a hill at the corner of the bottom. It was very odd for a gust of wind to come in where I was. If you could see the topography, you would understand why I'm saying this. Then I really started to feel a heavy sense of foreboding. I felt like I was not alone and that I was being watched. I was still trying to rationalize it out when all of a sudden I heard a few deep snorts that sounded as if they were in my general vicinity. At the most 15 feet away. But I heard no footsteps, no rustling, just the snorts. I thought to myself, it must be a buck, but why didn't I hear any movement? The hair on the back of my neck is now standing straight up, and I decided it was time to go. I packed up everything, doused the fire, and immediately walked up the hill. I felt like the whole time I was taking camp down that something was very agitated with me, and I had to get out of there immediately. It was a very intense feeling, and it did not subside until I was at least 50 feet away from where I was camped. It wasn't the only time I've had this kind of experience, but that's another story for another day. I think I'm going to have to go back down there before too long. Today's fourth experience on the paranormal side. So, I was 23 and living in a church. It was a still active church. They rented out rooms in one of the top floors of the add-on. So a little history about this church. It was built in a small town in upstate New York in the year of 1868. There's always been a legend about how one of the first pastors of this church murdered his wife and child and threw them into the Hudson River. In the 60s, they put 3 floors added on to the original building. It was used as a school for a long time, till I think about 1980. When I was living there, it was always spooky and eerie. At first, I never really thought anything of it. My room was the second largest room. It was right off of the attic of the original building. Part of the legend said the pastor had killed his family there. The door to the attic was up about 3 steps, and there was a little light above those steps. I always left that light on. So the real scary stuff started out small. I'd hear children laughing. I heard a woman scream. One time I was cleaning, and the doors to my room sounded like they flew open. I turned around expecting my friend to be coming in, and the doors were still closed. That's small stuff. So at this point in my life, I was having a hard time with my mental health. I was self-harming. I was on a mix of different meds that did not seem to work. I was also questioning my faith. I could always feel this feeling of not being wanted in that space I lived in. It was always heavy and oppressing. That's when the extra scary stuff started to happen. It started when I would lie on my bed and it felt as if someone was putting both sets of fingers on either my neck or my back. I was awake most of the time because of that. Then it was as if someone was sitting on top of my legs and their whole hands pressed down on me. I was a supposed Christian at that point, so I would say the Lord's Prayer, and over time it left me alone. Not long after that, I started seeing a black mass over me at night. It wasn't completely dark in my room because I left that step light on, but this mass was kind of hovering over me for a few seconds, then vanish. Soon, this evil thing started to enter my dreams. I had several dreams that were all kind of the same. In the dream, I was in my room. I would be on my bed, and I felt like someone was digging their fingers into my chest, like it was trying to steal my breath. I would try to scream, but no sound came out. Then I'd wake up. But I was still in my bed, and I would try to get up, but the pressure would just come back again as I tried to scream. One time in one of these dreams, the girl who lived in the room next to me came running in and tried to save me. In the dream, it actually felt like she shook me awake, but I was still trapped in the dream. I ended up moving out a whole year later, but I would still go back to the church every once in a while, as my parents still attended it. Each time I went back, because I was always on edge, because there were times I came in and whatever tortured me remembered me. After about 8 months, I moved out of the church. I went back for an ice cream social. It was held in the fellowship hall in the basement. I was in the kitchen talking to a friend about experiences I had when I lived there. A boombox in the other room turned all the way up as loud as it could go. No one was near it. I started crying and immediately left. But I have other experiences from this place. But I'm just going to end it here. In conclusion, I think this evil knew I was not mentally sound and latched onto me. It knew that I was an easy target. I tried to fight it, but the only way I could have it stop was to leave the place. Because since then, yes, I felt spirits and have had other experiences, but nothing ever like what happened to me in that church. Today's 5th experience on the paranormal side. I was 13 at the time. This one Sunday service, it was toward the end. And for those of you who are not keen on the structure of Christian church services, at the end, the pastor is pretty much saying the last prayer of the service that ties into what the sermon was about and the overall inspirational message of the day for people to take home and ponder on. Then at the very end, the pastor will ask whoever feels the need to be saved to come forward to the altar. Then he'll say another closing prayer for them. I've been through this 1,000 times growing up as a church kid, but this one time the pastor laid the prayer on thick, said some things that resonated with a lot of people. He's towards the end of the prayer. My eyes are still closed, and I hear this super deep, aggressive growl in my right ear. It is getting louder and louder, sounding more hostile. I freak out and open my eyes, and everything around me is vibrating and shaking visually. I freak out even more and close my eyes, and the growl still has not gone away. So now I'm freaked out to the max and open my eyes again, and then the growl tailed off and went away. No more vibrating and shaking visually. No one noticed. It only lasted 10 to 12 seconds, pastor saying the closing prayer for a few that came to the altar, and service was over. I'm 32 years old now, and I still think about that experience because I really don't know what was going on in those moments. Was it an evil entity or demon leaving my body, or was it trying to get into my body? Anyway, I was listening to a podcast a couple of months ago, and the host had this medium on. She said Satanists are known to frequent churches of all religions more than you would think. Ever since the day that happened, I've never viewed church the same again, and eventually just stopped going, but one day, I would like to talk to someone well-versed in demonology about my experience for closure. Today's final experience on the paranormal side. In 2009, I moved into a Victorian railway cottage in London, which was built in the 1890s, maybe 1900s. I moved in with my daughter, my partner, and the event that happened within weeks of us settling in. It was a 3-bedroom house with all of the bedrooms situated on the first floor. It was a November evening when my daughter was upstairs on her bunk bed. I was sitting in the living room watching TV. It was just us two in the house at the time. My partner was at work. There was nothing eerie leading up to this moment that I could remember, but all of a sudden I heard, really close to my ear, a guttural growl. It was very loud, but located right next to my ear, as if it was only meant to be heard by me in that one ear. It did not echo. It was just located right next to my head. As soon as I heard that growl, my daughter, who was 9 at the time, screamed from her room. I ran up the stairs, but it was as if I was being pushed up there. Maybe it was because of my speed or because of my panic, but when I got to her room, she was crying. I asked her what had happened, and she replied she had heard a growl in her ear. As you can imagine, I was absolutely freaked out. She was as well. I was not able to retell the experience for a long time, and only in the past year or so I had mentioned it to my daughter. But she has no memory of the event. I am a believer, and I think it was something demonic. I would have been skeptical had it just been me that heard it, but my daughter's reaction was enough to make me realize that this was the real deal. It traumatized me so much I wish I could just forget about it. Dang, that's scary. I wonder if the last two are somewhat not involved, but kind of like are connected. That's what I was looking for. Connected. I wonder if there's some sort of connection. Well, it's kind of interesting that these very creepy paranormal experiences are centered around churches, the house of the Lord. Now, I did practice a lot of my Native American spirituality growing up, a lot, but I was also raised Roman Catholic, and I did go to church more often than I wanted to when I was a child, and church school, which was on different days of church. And I was baptized, I was confirmated, and First Communion, baptized, First Communion, confirmation. So I know a little bit about what goes on. I know I used to get an eerie feeling about the church that my parents and I went to. It was a Roman Catholic church. It was just very creepy. The building has now changed. They kind of redid the whole thing. It was almost as if they ripped the church off, destroyed that one part and just built a new one, but I don't know how they expanded it to make it what it is now, but it does not feel the same anymore. It's just very weird. It's weird because, and I say it's weird because growing up, the priests that were there was one that married my parents, baptized me, and then the other, I received my First communion, and then the last was my confirmation. And all three of them were wonderful guys. Actually, the second, the one that I got my first communion on, we had a block party because myself, my cousin, and one of the other kids that lived on our street. We lived on a small street, Growling, before we moved to my dad's house, my grandfather's house by the farm. So we had this block party celebrating my communion and my cousin and my friends. And Father Pat came to the house and was drinking beers with my dad and stuff. He was cool. But anyway, I got off the point. But I felt very uncomfortable even with the three priests that I respected and felt safe around. And yet the church has a different feeling about it. And there's a new priest that my dad and mom stopped absolutely going to that church because they do not like him. He's kind of a smug, know-it-all. Very almost self-righteous, and you can see it. It just radiates off him. But the church feels different inside. It's very weird. Anyway, TMI, I guess. I hope you guys enjoyed today's upload as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. And please be kind to each other, and may the Great Spirit watch over us all, and may He guide us down that path of life. Until tomorrow, my friends. Until tomorrow.